because dozing off is only going to prolong how long it takes for you to finish your triple feed, and that is going to take you longer to get back to bed. On today's episode of the Navigating Low Milk Supply podcast, I'm going to be going over my top 5 tips that I have when it comes to triple feeding at night in a way that is as streamlined as possible. Tip number 1, keep it simple. There are 3 core foundational steps when it comes to triple feeding. That is breastfeeding, supplementing, and pumping. And I've actually gone over in previous episodes how exactly you can combine some of these steps so that way you can make your triple feed faster. But any of these alternative feeding methods take some prep work in order to replace a triple feed. So I actually don't recommend you doing one of those because it's going to make you have to wake up even earlier than you would have to for the feed. Plus, no one is really trying to mess around with the different tools and setting up equipment when you're half asleep anyway. Number 2, mix and match the triple feeding steps in whatever way works best for you. As long as you're doing all 3 steps of a triple feed within one sitting, it's a triple feed. It doesn't matter whether you do them in the order that I listed them off or you shuffle them around a little bit to make them work for you. As long as you're getting all 3 in, you're good. The only thing that I recommend is that you pump at the end if you are unsure if your baby has a good latch or is properly removing milk thoroughly from your breasts. Typically, a baby is better than a pump, but in certain circumstances, the baby may not be transferring the milk efficiently and draining the breast fully, which will not help with your milk production or trying to increase your supply. So if you have not had your baby's latch or feeding abilities assessed, I would recommend you only try swapping around breastfeeding and supplementing and make sure you pump at the very end. Now, with breastfeeding and supplementing, you can find a way that maybe works better for you in different times of the day. When I was triple feeding my son, we would breastfeed first during the daytime feeds, but at night we actually started off with a supplement via a bottle, and then we would end up breastfeeding after. So that way he was able to get the milk faster in him. It was able to keep him more in that half asleep state instead of fully waking up because he was crying and fussing for milk. And it allowed me to get him full fast while I was able to have a positive experience of him breastfeeding at the breast, and he was able to fall asleep with that positive association. So it was all around good for the both of us in that way. And then I would put him back down, which allowed me to be able to go quickly pump and then get back to bed. So the order in which you do all of these steps can actually speed up and expedite the process of triple feeding and allow you to get back to bed yourself even faster. Next tip is to set up a triple feeding station before going to bed. Think of all the tools and equipment you might need to be able to do your triple feed from start to finish. Do you need pillows to help you breastfeed comfortably? Have you grabbed your supplement, formula, or donor milk and whatever you need to help prepare that? And if so, how much? How many ounces do you need? And don't forget all of your pump parts. There are so many pieces to a triple feed that you don't want to forget, and you don't want to have to wake up earlier just to go grab and set up. This might also include water and protein-packed and nutrient-dense snacks for you in the middle of the night because breastfeeding is a lot of work on your body and it's not uncommon to be thirsty or hungry at night. The less things you have to grab in the middle of the night, the better. My next tip is to feed your baby somewhere that is not on or near your bed. It is way too tempting to fall back asleep when you are there. Unfortunately, if you fall back asleep in the middle of your triple feed, the thing that's most likely to get skipped over is the pumping step. And this is so important. Again, if your baby is not feeding efficiently, this is what is going to fully remove the milk from your breast that you need to be able to signal to up production for the next feed. So do not do this. This can honestly be anywhere. It can be in a chair, in a different room, or even on a different floor of your house. Keep in mind you might want to be close to your kitchen for convenience if you need to store any milk or pump parts after each feed. Now, this is a bonus tip, but one of my favorite hacks for middle of the night triple feeding is you actually can store your pump parts in the fridge for every feed, so that way you don't have to wash them in the middle of the night. Breast milk storage guidelines say that you can store breast milk in the fridge for up to 4 days safely. So knowing that, we can actually store our pump parts in an airtight bag or container in the fridge between feeds, so that way you don't have to wash them in between every single feed in the middle of the night. Just make sure you wash them once every 24 hours. But going back to where we want to set up our station, you want to make sure it's somewhere where you're less likely to fall back asleep, because dozing off is only going to prolong how long it takes for you to finish your triple feed, and that is going to take you longer to get back to bed. My next tip is to use a timer for what I call the rule of tens. Typically, breastfeeding best practices would say not to time or structure your feed in any type of way, but when you are triple feeding 8 to 12 times a day, you have to find a way to make this sustainable. The rule of tens is how I keep a triple feeding session down to 40 minutes, and that is 10 minutes of breastfeeding on each side, 10 minutes of supplementing, and 10 minutes of pumping. Of course, if your baby's been feeding for over 10 minutes and they're still hungry or actively nursing, keep feeding them. You don't have to stop. These rules are not necessarily strict, they're more of a framework. This is more so for babies who are sleepy at the breast, who have oral ties that are making it hard for them to nurse, or anything else that keeps them from nursing efficiently. And if you want a list of different things that can contribute to your baby having a hard time nursing and other things that can further fuel a low milk supply, then I have a free guide you can grab in the description below. But if your baby's not draining your best bet is to get them fed and get both of you back to bed as soon as possible. Now, if you want a deeper explanation of the rule of tens, I have the very first episode of this podcast where I go over it extensively and I go into more of what you need to know for a triple feed and what to do to make it as efficient as possible. We're going for best results here, but we're also going for balance.